alternate.
Yeah.
Oh, weird. I've never done it like this.
Yeah. That's what she said. So we are live. Yeah, I know. We're live. So we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Women of Deconversion. I'm a little out of sorts today. I just spilled milk all over the place, so that's exciting. Everywhere. I was having milk and cookies, like the one time of year when I gorge on 12 Oreo cookies and a glass of milk, and I get destroyed. So I know we've been talking about the 7 deadly sins, but this week we're going to take a break and talk about something a little more real. I think I kind of got tired of talking about sins we didn't care about. I felt like we were like, yeah, that's okay. Hey, Jen.
Hi, sorry I'm late. It didn't notify me.
Oh, you're good. No worries. And so I think we'll go back to that. But we're going to take a break and talk about how the process of deconversion relates to the stages of grief and how that worked out for us. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good discussion. I've got a website of the stages of grief pulled up, so we can kind of go over it if y'all want, and
Sure.
kind of go one by one. The first stage is denial, which is the first of the 5 steps of grief. It helps us to survive a loss, and in this stage, the world becomes meaningless and overwhelming. Life makes no sense. We're in a state of shock and denial. We may go numb. We may wonder how we can go on, if we can go on, why we should go on, and this kind of really sounds familiar to me in terms of what I went through when I discovered, oh my God, I've been lied to, and I was kind of like, nah, they wouldn't do that, and if that's true, how can I go on, and is there any meaning, and just kind of trying to cling to the belief as much as I could. Have y'all experienced anything similar to that?
Yeah, I never really thought that I would completely deconvert. I also, like, when I actually deconverted, I didn't think that there was anyone else that thought the way that I did about it. I thought I was the only one ever. I think we talked about this a while ago, but I remember it not really occurring to me that I would become a person that didn't believe in anything. I thought I would just find something different.
Oh yeah, that happened to me too, definitely. I think I was just I started like you, Courtney, with the idea that, okay, this isn't right, so then what is?
Right.
So sort of that, where I'd been doubting the whole time I was a Christian, you would think that you would be able to just say, or I'd be able to just say, okay, maybe there's no God. But I really didn't start with that.
Yeah. I don't know how long it took me to figure that out for myself, or figure out that that's what I actually thought. I think it might have taken a year or two.
I had a question for you, Jen. Like when you were, because you said you were trying to hold on to the belief.
Yeah.
So at that point, were you thinking like, this doesn't make sense? I'm not sure if this is true. Like, what was your thought towards the like truth of the belief?
It was kind of tied into my circumstance because I had been through like so much abuse when I was a kid, and from the very people that taught me to believe in God and what God is like and God is the meaning, etc., etc. So when my parents divorced and we got away from my dad, I was kind of like, my mom was kind of absent. She had to like go to school, go to work, go to the bar, whatever. And so like, I really had some time to think about this on my own. And I also had a couple of friends that were atheist, and they would challenge me. And when I discovered I didn't really have any answers to some of their questions, it made me wonder, and it also scared me because I didn't want to not believe. This was all I had ever known. And I couldn't even conceive of myself not being a believer.
So, did you guys have the same problem? I'm sorry, Jen, you can finish.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. I just had did you have that issue where you couldn't say that you didn't believe in Jesus? For like that was really tough for me, saying it out loud.
Yeah. Especially to my mom, because she was, to the day she died, she was a very, I wouldn't say strong believer, but she was adamant about it, Yeah, it was really difficult for me to tell her that, hey, I'm no longer convinced by this. Because I didn't want to disappoint her. And I know that sounds weird, even though I was like angry, which we'll get to that in a second, but it still was really tough to admit to everyone that I didn't believe.
Yeah.
At first, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, yeah, I can relate to that, and I actually still, a lot of my family members don't know because I'm too scared to have that conversation with them. So I feel like I just perform when I'm around, and we just had the holidays, and I spent the whole holidays with my family, and there's just a lot of, and actually we, at one point we went to a church service because I was like, I'm going to go along with this because this is what my, parents want. And it's so performative and so fake, but I'm also scared. Yeah. It's hard.
That's tough.
It's very tough. It's like you can't be who you are, or at least a certain part of you, right? Yeah. Around the people that you love the most. And it's really, really tough. But I understand not wanting to upset them. I really relate to that.
Yeah, about denial for me, I think, like you were saying, Jen, it took me a really long time to have another option in my brain. Like, it just didn't make sense that there was any other option. So I thought, like, it started getting more and more and more confusing, but I didn't know that there was any other way to solve that confusion. It was like, this has to make sense no matter how awful it feels. And, because I remember, right, like, at the beginning of the process of my deconversion, I joined the custodial team at my church. So instead of being in service, I was cleaning the toilets. And so I was going to service a lot less. And when I did go to service, I didn't participate as much. Like, there was this period of time where I would just like watch, and I was like, it was just like weird. I don't know. I think like the process that I went through was kind of subconscious, and I couldn't quite say what was going on. It just like something felt off, but I couldn't form any like actual doubts, like saying to myself, this doesn't make sense. Maybe this isn't true. Like, that just in my brain was not an option for a really, really long time. And I also get the like saying out loud, I don't think this is true. That's really hard. Like,
there is no God. Yeah, there is no God was hard for me.
I worked at a summer camp right after I realized that I was no longer a Christian, like a Christian summer camp.
Wow.
So I like didn't say anything to anybody until like the maybe like 2 days before it was over, and I had this like 5-hour conversation with my supervisor and another coworker, and like it just kind of came up, and I said like, yeah, I don't know if I believe in God anymore. And that was like so hard to say.
Wow.
So like I relate to that.
And I also, you touched on something that I think is important too, and that is you kind of have the feeling first before you can really kind of logically connect to it, before you can rationalize what it is you're feeling, because it's so unfamiliar, I guess.
Yeah.
I would love to hear someone talk about conversion, Because that sounds like something that could go either way.
It could.
You know?
Yeah.
It really could if you're switching from one way of viewing the world to another.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
guess
definitely.
that would work both ways with losing something that you previously believed, whether you're converting to something else or deconverting altogether. You're still losing a concept of the world that you thought was true and really a part of yourself, which is it is a literal grief, and you're going through these stages that are probably just as complete as losing, you know, especially we've talked before about the relationship with Jesus being something that was very personal and real and literal. And I was like that too. And so when you lose that idea that this is this ultimate friend who's looking out for you and who is perfect in every way, and someone who's a companion that you talk to all the time, and losing that and feeling like you've been talking to no one. Like, there was a movie about A Beautiful Mind. It's like not that your friends have died or that they're not there anymore, but they never existed at all, you know? And that's really tough, you know, like this is
a lot harder, doesn't it? It's like all this time I've been deceived.
Yeah, me and Jesus were tight.
Yeah, and it's kind of like not only do you lose like the Jesus aspect and this personal relationship with Christ, you also lose a major part of your identity as a Christian, whatever religion you come from. So yeah, it really is a loss. Not to mention all the companions and what do you call it?
Like relationship,
the community that you're in, you know, and you think, wow, if I don't believe, then what happens to my community?
That's the thing I miss the most, and I still miss that. I still have a really hard time with, and I have dreams a lot about my church that Christine and I grew up in, and it's like always about it's always wrapped up with the sense of community and belonging. And I think it's really hard to find the equivalent. I mean, I have a good friend group now, but it doesn't feel quite the same as like the community that a church can offer. I mean, if I had surgery, a couple of my close friends would help me out, but I wouldn't have like people bringing me meals and people writing me cards. And that's a thing that you have, like that's an infrastructure that you have in place if you're part of church.
Yeah, and I'm praying for you, and we're all praying for you, and we're all thinking about you and all that stuff. Yeah.
And also within Christianity, like when me and my family would travel, you just, like if we're driving somewhere overnight, you just stopped Sunday morning at some random church, and it's like, oh, you're all family. It's like you have this huge family like all over the world, and you're just accepted right away because you share the same beliefs.
Yeah, and you also have the idea that, you know, you're all going to be in the same place in heaven after you die. So there's a whole lot that ties into the community aspect, I think.
Yeah. So when you're grieving the deconversion, you're not only grieving your previous identity and the very real concept of Jesus and God that you talk to all the time, who's like the most important friend of your life, but then also you have to oftentimes grieve the losses of the relationships you're in and the people who are tied to that belief that you can no longer rely on. That's really sad.
Yeah.
It's also relatively a lonely grief. You don't have people coming up to you saying, oh, how are you? Like, oh, you know, Jesus was such a good person. Let's talk about the positive.
That's such a good point. Yeah.
You'll see Jesus in heaven.
But yeah, it's just so, there's so much to it, especially when you're raised in it.
Yeah.
Because it becomes the entirety of you and your life and your memories and all of that. And so it's a real threat whenever doubt arises.
Yeah, it's like everything.
Yeah.
Like your whole worldview, like literally everything that like connects you to the world and your understanding of the world and all the people in it. It's like,
your grandmas, your uncles, your just everyone.
And the idea that there's like a plan for your life, you know, grieving the concept of who you are and what your trajectory in life is going to be and what you're going to accomplish in life. Because, yeah, if you think that you're supposed to wait for God to tell you what to do with your life and then no longer that safety net isn't there.
Yeah. Oh my God, I have to be an adult. I have to be responsible for my life. Oh,
I'm
no.
like alone in the world.
Yeah. It's. And so I can see why, you know, when people are first starting to down and deconverting, why they're so afraid to even face the doubt, to even face the concept that I'm responsible for my life.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me, because it's really, there is a comfort to just believing, like, if I just do whatever, God will work it out. You know, I'll end up doing what I'm supposed to be doing because God's in control. And now I've had to learn how to be okay with the fact that I am in control of my life, which can be good and empowering, but is also really scary. Because it means, like, right now I'm job searching and there is a lot of anxiety because I can't rely on that model anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I've been really trying to work on agency and like people have told me you just want to do your own thing and whatever, and I'm like, no, I wish somebody would tell me what to do. Like, like I'm trying to take that.
Yeah, it's just like that free will argument. Like I have to live as if I have free will, right? Like you have to live your own life and make your own decisions and live for yourself because there's nothing else you can do.
Yep. Yeah. Definitely.
So a couple of people in the chat have talked about how maybe it might be harder for women. So do you think the denial aspect, the piece that we're talking about now, has anything to do with us as women, like being women?
Specifically related to denial?
Yeah. Well,
I think
maybe go ahead. I'm sorry.
Who's talking? Who's talking?
I can talk. I have an idea. Okay.
Go for it, Rachel.
Go, Rachel.
I think a lot of women are more in tune with the social environment that's around them, and they may use religion as a way of, like, you know, social bonding and things like that. And so, like, the disappointment from, like, your parents and people that you're really close to and whatever, you may feel that more strongly than other people that aren't so in tune to that. What do you guys think?
I think, when it comes to the community aspect, generally speaking, women are more social. We're more socially inclined. We're more, like, intuitive to that whole aspect of community and support, you know. So, and it, like it was brought up in the chat, we're also trained, or at least I was trained to be, you know, the wife to be, you know, the second in command. So it was really difficult for me to grapple with the idea of independence. So
I definitely agree with what you guys are saying, and especially about the identity point. Yeah, I mean, I struggle with that too, because I do think for women, there's a lot wrapped up in the Christian identity that has more to do with other, like, social gender norms, like being a wife and being a mom. And so, yeah, I definitely experienced that loss when I deconverted, because when I was younger, and I don't know, maybe some of you can relate to this, when I was younger, I was really obsessed with wanting to be that kind of woman. So, like, I wanted to just, like, be a housewife and have a bunch of babies. Because I read Christian romance novels and, you know, there was this whole part of me that then also I lost with the deconversion, although I think it's a good thing. And I really love who I am now because I've separated myself from that. But yeah, maybe there is, I think there is maybe a point to make about how obviously men have an identity too as Christian, are wrapped up, or women in these other roles other gendered roles in a way that's different.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys think.
I don't know how many times I was told, Rachel, you're going to make some young man very happy one day.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would never.
Why are
I
we
was
defined
never
by
told that.
what man we're able to attract?
Right.
Man, yeah, okay.
I was definitely never told that.
Oh, man.
I was definitely told, hey, you need to be this way and that way because your whole goal is to please your man, and you
All
need
this
to.
shit is so annoying. I definitely relate to what you were saying, Heather. It's just,
Yeah, that's true. Like Heather, you were talking about this concept of there's more of a life trajectory laid out for women in the Christian faith than men, possibly. Like there's more restriction in the trajectory we're supposed to take. So that's another piece that we're losing of this life plan. And you kind of have to redefine not only like your trajectory as a person, but as a woman and like what that means for you. That's a whole different redefining of what you're gonna do.
Right. The concept of femininity in Christianity is very laid out.
Itty. Laid out itty.
Laid out in yeah. It's set before you, you know, and you have to be held to these certain standards. And so, most of those standards is shh, don't say anything, don't cause waves, don't question. Yeah. So it's a little bit more, there's a lot more pressure for us to stay in that denial phase. At least in my experience.
I think it's funny. Many of you, well, okay. So I know a little bit about each of you and your family lives, a little bit, when you were younger. My family was really dysfunctional. And I know some of you understand this, but I didn't have the father figure and stuff that a lot of Christian homes do. And not my dad's great, don't get me wrong, but he's not that kind of person, you know, that authority figure. And so I think that made it easier for me to translate my femininity out of Christianity and kind of hold on to what I already had, because I didn't have that same oppression or that a lot of people have in a Christian home.
I want to hug you right now.
I always want to hug you, Starkey.
Hugs are welcome.
I know. We're so far away.
I know, but we can
internet hug.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna lose viewers. Keep going.
That's right.
So, did y'all want to continue with the grief, or did you want to move on to the next stage?
The denial. Let's talk about the next stage. That sounds like a good idea.
Sure. Thank you. Just keep me in line, don't you? Okay. So, next stage.
No, I don't.
Before we do move on to the next stage, I did want to ask each of you if you had any advice to get beyond that stage of denial. You know, from your own experience.
That's really good. I think for me, just surrounding myself with friends that have also deconverted and or are already grew up in a secular household was really good, because it normalized agnosticism for me, and then I was able to get past the fear of speaking out loud, like we were talking about. Because when you're in a context where that's normal and everyone is saying those kinds of things, then it just becomes easier. So yeah, that's the advice I would give.
Yeah, I would also say to just be patient with yourself, because it is a big transition, and it can sometimes just take time for you to get used to the idea and get used to yourself in this new space. And I do know that like the stages of grief aren't necessarily linear. Like you kind of go back and forth. And so sometimes you might feel one way and another way, and it's kind of fluid. So you do have to kind of allow yourself the space to feel how you feel when you feel it, and, you know that that's normal and fine.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like, forgive yourself. And also, like, it's okay to kind of believe in Jesus and God again and still call yourself and still be part of this community. That's something that I actually struggle with in this community specifically sometimes, is I feel like, you know, everybody's so steadfast in their atheism. Yeah. And I wouldn't say I'm pretty steadfast at this point, you know, at least in my, in my agnostic nature. But I do sometimes feel like, you know, we can sometimes alienate people who have questions, you know, not, you know, and feeling questions, not the logical ones, the ones where it's like, you know, where do I go from here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that makes sense. I think
I get that. Yeah.
I think I'm very comfortable being a naturalist. Like I would call myself a naturalist, but I totally get the like there have been times where I've felt the same feelings that I felt as a Christian, and it feels like God's real, like that person's real. I mean, it hasn't happened very often, but it has. So if people are feeling that way, like I get that.
Yeah, and it's okay. Like that's fine. And so I think that denial, like getting through that denial, is accepting that you are an atheist. Like first, if you are, you know, or agnostic or just deconverted, is really the first step, you know, saying, okay, out loud to yourself, I don't believe in God, even though it may give you like stomach pains. or you can't, that's a big step, is just saying it out loud, or saying it to one of us, or to someone that you know that's also an atheist, you know, or deconverted.
Someone you can trust, someone that you know isn't going to judge you for your beliefs or your lack of beliefs, or however you want to put it. I think you're right. It needs to be Kitty. There is like a lack of support when it comes to the newly questioning people.
Yeah.
A lot of times it'll be the most adamant Christians that are the ones that are in doubt.
Yeah.
It's interesting how that dynamic plays out, because they're really trying to hang on to it. They need it, because if they don't have that, then what is their life about? And that's that's a great way to highlight the stage of denial.
That's funny. If Shannon was here, she would say that she was one of those, because she hung on pretty tight at the beginning of her deconversion. She tried to read everything, study the Bible, really like understand why people thought it was wrong. So
yeah, and
shout out to my girl.
Yeah, Shannon, hi. Whenever you're in that stage, it's you're looking to prove to yourself that this is real. Surely there's something out there that can prove to me that God is real.
Yeah.
So that's very common.
I think for me, it took me a really long time to say to myself, you can believe what makes sense to you. You don't, if just because these other people believe this, that's okay. They are convinced that it's true. But if you feel like you are changing your mind or something doesn't make sense, that's okay. And you can pay attention to that.
Yeah. So what's the next stage of grief, Jen?
Anger.
Oh, nice.
Favorite one. So anger is a necessary stage of the healing process. So don't diss it, y'all. It's cool. Being willing to feel your anger, even though it may seem endless. The more you truly feel it, the more you will begin to dissipate, and the more you will heal. So it also says that there are many other emotions under the anger that you'll need to get them in line. But anger is the emotion where that is most used for managing. So,
it's most used for managing? What do you mean?
Like whenever it kind of helps us realize what we do and don't want, especially what we don't want and what we reject in our process. So
Interesting.
Yeah, the truth, it also says the truth is that anger has no limits. It can extend to your friends, the doctors, your family, yourself, and your loved ones who may have passed, and also to God. Interesting, right? You may ask, where is God in this? I mean, who hasn't done that, right? Even believers, people are still believing, ask this question, you know, whenever something tragic happens, where is God?
Mm-hmm.
So
I do want to kind of talk about there's kind of two different types of angry atheism that people talk about, because a lot of people talk about that earlier stage of atheism when you first deconvert and you get really angry about feeling lied to and yeah, like just being mad that you were kind of duped in this way. But then at the same time, as you progress in your different worldview, there's a different type of angry atheism that is kind of like what Greta Christina wrote about in her "Why Are You Atheists So Angry" book, which talks about there being legitimate things about the way that religion plays out in the world for you to be angry about. And so it's a more like long-lasting version of angry atheism that people will wear as a proud label. You know, like there's that stage that a lot of people have in early atheism where they like go online and they get really mad at people and they're really berating, but then later you calm down a bit, but you still can consider yourself an angry atheist because it's kind of a shift in anger about what's happening in the world and the effect this has on everybody and the harm that it causes. So to me, like there's two different ones.
Agreed. I'm glad you brought that up because that's a very, very poignant aspect of the anger phase when it comes to this topic. Is that when you first get out, you're questioning like everybody, including yourself. But after a while, it kind of it's more focused into certain things that you see that are how religion impacts the world and people. There's a lot of harm that is caused by religion. A lot of it.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's difficult to ignore. I can't. I just can't. I wish I could, but I can't ignore it.
I could.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that like that in her book, in Greta Christina's book, it's not that like, you know, these things you shouldn't be angry about these things. These are things that believers and non and everybody as a human being should be angry about. So it's making that point that like, you know, there's this argument against angry atheism, quote unquote, as being a negative thing, but it's sort of turned on its head where it's like, you know, there's legitimate things to be angry about. And if you're a feeling moral being, then that's what you should feel.
Definitely.
Go ahead, Christine.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say that that I think I'm a little bit different when it comes to anger. I'm not a very angry person. Though a couple of people can bring it out of me, but the anger for me was before I deconverted. I would get angry, I would get upset. I wouldn't say angry. I would get like deeply upset when God spoke to other people and didn't speak to me through prophets and things. And when I really looked at the world and how many religions there are, I got angry at the fact that God allowed so much variation and then said our Christian way was the only way, or not Christian, but at least, you know, Christian, Catholic, Judeo, the Judeo-Christian way was the only way, or somewhere in that track. And so I think I was angry before I deconverted. I'm really not mad now. Like I'm mad at, you know, what religion has done, but not any more angry than I'm mad at what the government can do, you know. So it's not like a different type of anger than that. It's more, I understand people are not always good, and that's what comes from not good people.
Exactly.
So yeah, so I think I have a little bit different experience.
I relate to that too. I used to be angry because there were non-believers in the world.
Yeah.
That's
How
funny.
can they not believe?
I think for me, like through this whole process, me dealing with my emotions has been kind of blah. So like um I used to think that I never got angry. Like I just thought that wasn't an emotion that I felt frequently, like at all. And so I was like, "Oh yeah, I just don't get angry." And now that I've been trying to like validate and recognize all the different things that I'm feeling or whatever, it's like, "Whoa, like where is this coming from?" So I'm like, "Okay, I do feel anger and I feel lots of anger about some things and sometimes, but I think I just like didn't recognize it." So, um,
Do you think maybe you were putting it in God's hands, so to speak, or compartmentalizing it in some way?
um, when I was a Christian,
Yeah.
I think I was just not supposed to get angry. Like I got the message, like my family's very fundamentalist, and part of fundamentalism is like emotions are bad and
Right.
like they kind of have a spiritual aspect to them. So if you're feeling like a very strong emotion, that's either like something from God or like something demonic, and it's like you want to just push it down. So there's a lot of like suppression that happens, which is not healthy. But
That is not, no.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm glad
Unless
that
it's
you're able
righteous
to
anger.
actually feel and recognize that you're feeling that anger and know what it
Mhm.
is and deal with it now. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I found that really liberating too, so I can relate to that. Like I remember enjoying the fact that I was allowed to be angry, and allowed to be critical, which I know they're slightly different, but
Yeah.
and that's something I still love about. And of course, because I'm an academic now, it's like that's all we do is criticize, and I love it. And
Yes.
it makes my parents so uncomfortable. They just have a really hard time as Christians.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, being able to, and that could be partly like them specifically, but I do think it's also tied in with their fundamentalism to some extent. Like they don't like talking about politics because they just feel like they can be removed. But then and then when I try to remind them, like that's partly because if you're like they're wealthy white people, right? Like I'm like, well, you can,
Yeah.
yeah, you can be removed anyway. But then they get upset hearing that. So anyway, so I do like that part of deconversion for sure. Although I'm past the like angry stage to some extent now, which is good. But like the critical, just being able to critique institutions and things. Yeah, I love doing that. Yeah.
I love that too. That's awesome.
The non-criticizing. Oh, sorry, Courtney.
Oh, you're good. I would want to clarify that like second stage of anger, or that second version of anger with like why are you atheists so angry in the book. It isn't talking about like being physically angry all the time. It's just saying that we are concerned, like what Christine was saying. And so like it's not, yeah, she kind of clarifies that of like, you know, it's this image that we're angry all the time, and that's not what it is. But I do think that in that earlier stage, like what Heather was saying, you do have a physical anger at things, and you can lash out at people. I don't know that I went through that stage because I may not have had like the platform to do it with like online, because I don't think I use it in that way, but a lot of people do. And you know, that can be really rough for a while.
It was awful. I was so mean. It was bad. I would be ashamed, but eh.
And
I do think that, you know, what you were highlighting at the end there, Courtney, kind of ties into what Heather was saying about critique, because we're looking at institutions and we're critiquing them and we're saying this is morally wrong or what have you. So, yeah, I think that's a healthy thing. I think that's something that we should do, not only with religion, but like Christine and Heather were both saying, with the government, with other institutions as well. That's good.
And also just one other thing I was going to add, also like the ability to be critical of the institutions you're a part of, because it's just funny. Like that's another thing that I noticed with fundamentalism. Like there's a hesitancy towards actually like looking at your own church structure, your own pastor, what have you.
That's the same in my family too. Like
Okay.
anything you say that's negative is like, how could you say that? That's
Yeah.
so critical. It's like,
Whereas, like, you can do both. You know, like, I love academia, but I could also talk to you all for hours about all of the things that are wrong with academia. You know, like, or
Yeah.
our country. You know, like, I'm not unpatriotic, but I have tons of critiques of our country. But you can do both. Like, you can.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The
I
people
would
I
actually
respect.
argue that
Oh,
a
sorry.
true patriot, it would be critical of their country. They would want their country to be morally
yeah.
right and correct. Go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, I don't. We talked at the same time, so we're all good. Hugs. Anyway, Heather, I wanted to comment on what you said. I think that the Christians now that I respect the most are the ones who are critical of their religion and who try to really come to terms with some of those problems that they see, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it can make early atheists angry that you feel lied to, but you also feel condescended to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like there's this sense that, everybody thinks it's a stage and they're going to talk down to you and say, oh, you're young, or oh, you haven't had children yet, or oh, you're going through this phase in your life, and you feel like you know better about this subject than they do because you grappled with it for so long to get to where you are, and you're treated as if you don't know enough. Yeah, like
Rachel, I'm thinking of you when she's saying this. Yeah. Everything she's saying.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You haven't thought about it enough, or you're not being, you're being selfish, or you're
it's
being
just a phase.
Self-centered. Yeah.
And there's you to question God.
So many insults.
And that's kind of the thing that really, whenever you do eventually come out and you say, hey, I'm an atheist, and you tell your family and your friends, they haven't gone through the process like you have.
Yeah.
So they don't really have that connection, to the process at all, they don't know that you've thought about this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
and also I think they may feel like it's kind of sudden. Like I've been told, like, Rachel, this doesn't sound like you. When I'm like, okay, well, I just have been thinking about this point for the last 3 days, but it doesn't sound like me because it's not something I would normally say, apparently. But yeah.
Yeah, and it goes back to that whole identity thing. Oh, our good little Christian Rachel. She would never say anything like that. Never. But yeah, so do y'all have anything else to add about anger?
No.
So what kind of advice would you give someone who is going through this anger stage?
Try not to be mean to people.
And find a way to express it. Because the people that are in your life, you may have legitimate reasons to be angry at them, but you also have to process that anger yourself and sort through where it's coming from, and just blah at everybody is probably not the best approach.
Oh boy, I did this wrong.
It may help you feel better, but it might not help live a relationship or be productive.
Yeah,
for that aspect.
It's not good that it's part of that stage. It's part of what a lot of people go through, but it also kind of gives a really bad name to what atheism is, of somebody berating a believer for making them feel stupid. And it's that's not the way to go about engaging with believers, but it can come off that way with somebody who's new to the concept of engaging with believers.
To be perfectly honest, when I was believing in the occult stuff, I had to hear these beliefs are stupid. I had to hear that to kind of jar me out of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm different.
I think you can present that in a way that's not belittling and you're such an idiot. How could you think this?
Right. And
I don't know. Maybe you needed to hear that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But before you're practiced at engaging with believers in a respectful way, you can confuse the person with the idea.
Yes.
And so that's, like a less practiced person at engaging with this. It's not that they're really a bad person or that they're bad at what this is. It's just that they haven't had experience with that pushback from believers and the aftermath of giving atheism this like really bad name.
Yeah.
I think either Heather or Christine were about to say something too.
You go, Heather.
Oh, I wasn't going to say anything. I'm just agreeing. And
Oh, good.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
was going to say a good way to deal with your anger is to, like what we were saying before, not just be angry at being deceived, but also understand that there are problems in many institutions, and the government, and people individually. And when you realize that, yes, you were lied to about religion, but you've been lied to about a lot, accepting that the world isn't necessarily as on your side as you thought, or at least at least you don't have that fallback, of religion, and looking at it as at a more broad, with a more broad eye, might help you accept your anger over religion. Just realizing that you could be angry about so many things, so why not think about that and broaden your anger, be angry at more things. That's how you deal with your anger.
I've got that down. I've all the outrage.
And remembering that the world doesn't owe you fairness.
Yeah.
Which is really tough.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really struggled with that when I first deconverted. I had such a clear sense of like fairness, because in Christianity, even if shit happens to you in life, there is like, it does seem fair, because it's like, oh yeah, but you get your reward in heaven. And yeah, I had a really hard time initially with just realizing the world, with really internalizing that the world is not just. And there are assholes who are millionaires, and people who are really good people who are poor, and whatever, like, or just bad things happen to people for no reason.
It's funny, Heather, when we were first talking about our podcast, sorry for the plug, I didn't mean it, Forsaking Faith.
Say it.
Didn't. I think we haven't published an episode in 4 months, Heather. We need to.
It's okay.
We need to.
Come on. No.
Yeah, we need to
I
start
know.
it up again.
We'll get back. I promise. I'm getting my mic fixed, or just buying a new one. I don't know yet. But anyway, one of the main things that Heather said was we need an episode on fairness and order. I think that she struggled a lot too. And so, for those of you that are angry, right now we don't have a big fan base here on Women of Deconversion. So reach out to us and we'll be angry with you. We're not going to be like overwhelmed with. So it's also good to just have someone to be angry with.
Yeah. And one thing that I did want to point out, and I have a lovely friend in the chat, Wonder Lady, who taught me something that I think is very important, and it relates to this. People are allowed to be wrong, and it's okay. It's okay that I was wrong. It's okay that my parents were wrong. It's okay that a lot of people that engage in religious practices are wrong. It's not up to me to save the world.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to highlight when you're in this.
And they can just be wrong and stay wrong, and it's not your job. Is that what you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a really big thing for a lot of people to grasp, myself included. Like that's hard to accept that like not every problem is going to be fixed, which is another thing that like, we lose when we lose our religion, that like everything has a purpose and everything is going to work out.
Yeah.
So definitely.
But one more, I know I'm talking a lot, but one more thing about anger though, that like, the thing that I've found really encouraging about atheism is when you're angry at the world as a believer, you think that it's all part of a plan, and you justify the way that it is because that's part of God's plan and it's all good. And it's going to be fixed if it's not perfect already. But when you're not a believer, you have this like, weight of the world of like, everything is the way it is because we just made it that way. So if you are angry about the way that the world is, it's it's important to take those things on as causes that you can make an effect on, and to actually, be that change that you'd like to see. And I've found it to be really encouraging with atheism, because the fact that the world is the way it is because we made it that way and there isn't a higher power means that we have the power to make that change.
Yes.
That's really encouraging.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell him. That is, I think, a key component in this. It really is. So, all right. So now we're on the bargaining stage. So this is a fun one. It says, before a loss, it seems like you would do anything if only your loved one or your belief would be spared. And please, God, you bargain. I will never be angry at my wife again if you just let her live. After a loss, bargaining may take the form of a temporary truce. What if I devote the rest of my life to helping others? Then I wake up and realize that this has all been a bad dream. We become lost in a maze of if only or what if statements. We want life returned to what it was. We want our belief restored. We want to go back in time to find the issues and recognize it before it begins and stop it quickly.
Yeah.
So guilt is often the bargaining's companion, it says. So that's a really big part, is the guilt.
So can I start, Snarky?
Of course.
Okay. So and this happened like maybe 4 or 5 nights ago. So I have nightmares, still really bad ones, where I bargain with God in them. So where I'm saying like, if you do this, I'll believe, or if you show me this, I'll believe, and waking up from those is so hard, because it's tough to tell myself that that's not really God, so I know it's not part of the bargaining phase, but I notice myself doing it.
I don't know.
As a bargaining tool. It's really weird.
I would say subconsciously it is.
Yeah.
I'd say it qualifies.
You're gonna make me cry, Christina.
It's scary. Yeah.
That's really tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
Because the nightmares are like anywhere from like they can be bad. They could be like something happening to my kid, or like, so they're it's tough. And it's like when I wake up, I'm like, whoa. I have to like re-deconvert all over again. Not really. It takes like 2 seconds, right? But it's like, oh my God. Yeah. Oh my, not God. Sorry.
That must be a huge emotional shock. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It happens a lot too. It's not uncommon. Especially I get really demonic dreams sometimes too, and just saying like I plead the blood of Jesus in my dreams. Wow. I've done it, and it's like it's so powerful to feel those feelings again, that it's just overwhelming when I'm awake, So.
I guess what makes sense about that is that if there's something in your life that's overwhelming you, you maybe miss that sort of trump card you can use of like this ultimate level of comfort and safety net. That's like, God's going to help me. I can call on God to help me with this because it feels bigger than I am. It can be tough to realize that there's nothing there, and to have to realize that all over again, where you feel that sense of comfort or that choice that you have to make that bargain, and realize it's not a choice anymore. It's not available.
Yeah.
That's some really, really deep emotional stuff. And I'm sorry that you're struggling with that. No, really, like I can relate, because I had similar dreams when I was a teenager and I was deconverting from Christianity. And, the demon thing, oh my God, it took me years to get over the nightmares and the stuff. So I really feel for you there. I do.
Yeah, so someone recently told me that therapists are good for everybody, so
Yes.
I have to take that to heart.
And
I'm a big therapy advocate. So
Yeah.
go ahead,
What'd you say,
Courtney. I'm
Courtney?
sorry.
Well, just this conversation is proof that like atheists don't actually believe and they're just denying it. Like we struggle with the fact that we can't believe, you know?
Yeah.
That's hard in and of itself. And there are times when we would like to be able to believe because it's easier and it gives you more emotional comfort every once in a while, even though it comes with a lot of baggage. But that's such a good point of like, you don't choose what you believe.
Right.
Yeah.
When did anyone have anything else to say? Go
ahead, Rach.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, you said like when you were reading the thing about bargaining, you said something about like trying to figure things out and like prevent the whatever's happening. I felt like a huge pressure to like I need to figure this shit out, like what's happening, understand everything, and that kind of gets overwhelming. I don't know if that's related, like trying to fix things and figure it out and
definitely. What could I have done to prevent this?
Yeah.
How is this my fault? What can I do? I've got to be able to do something.
Why didn't I do this sooner? Yeah, why didn't I get it's a big one.
That too.
I think a lot of people feel that. Like, how could I have been so wrong?
Yeah. Philosophically Godless has mentioned that before. Is it See, Godless Iowan no more?
He's Godless Iowan. His channel name is Philosophically Godless, but he's still GI.
All right, good. So he's mentioned that he struggled with that in a big, because he talks about like losing parts of his life, right? Like pieces of his life. So, yeah.
When I first maybe like the first 6 months after I deconverted, I would have these like times where I'd be journaling and I would it's kind of like really weird, but I'd have these like eureka moments about something. I have to read through my journal and see like what the fuck I was writing. But it's just like this huge like, whoa, that makes so much sense. So yeah, this like I have to figure this out. Something I just think I was confused for so long that having things make sense and have the dissonance like gone was like huge.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's related to bargaining, but
it's like a weight just is lifted off.
Yeah.
It really is.
Like, is that like having to justify why something bad could have been part of a benevolence God plan, right?
Maybe, yeah, like trying to make this make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, why would this, what purpose does this serve? Like, if you think that there's supposed to be a purpose, then you drive yourself crazy thinking that, you have to justify a child's death or something. And like, yeah, that can be easier to deal with when it's like shit happens, man. Like,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I do want to put a positive spin on the bargaining though. I don't know if we're kind of closing the bargain part, but that it kind of goes back to stuff we've talked about before about taking credit for your successes. That like when you're dealing with something that Christine is dealing with, when it's a negative, it can be really scary to be alone in that. But then when you find your way out, that's all on you. Like all of that strength and like perseverance and all of that credit goes to you, and that makes you feel so proud of yourself to have figured that out. And you own that. You own your life and you own your place in the world and the effect you have on other people, and that can be a really amazing thing to feel when you see your way through something like that. So I'm glad that we can feel that now and not feel like all of that is just part of the plan and there's nothing special about what we've done.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that we did it.
Yeah.
I love that thought. So, Heather, did you have any kind of bargaining that you have gone through or you're currently going through?
Not really. I was trying to think of an example, and I don't know that I ever went through that stage as much. I definitely did things like Courtney was mentioning, like trying to, wrestle with justifying like why a God would let bad things happen to people and like that kind of thing. But in terms of like the actual deconversion, yeah, maybe I'll think of something and I'll add it in, but we can also move on to the next one. But
Okay. Before we do move on, I did want to go through this again. Did you have any advice for people that are going through the bargaining stage?
Just keep going. You'll get there.
Yeah.
Keep bargaining.
Keep bargaining. You'll get the
You'll
good
get it.
bargain soon.
Yeah. You'll get it.
You got to haggle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, with time, it gets easier with time. Like having this concept that option isn't there anymore. Some people, when they first deconvert, they keep praying to God and like talking to him, because it's a hard habit to break. And over the years that I've been an atheist, it becomes much more foreign to me, this concept of doing that. So I think it just comes with time, where you can really settle into this life is what it is, and it's not this other thing that I thought it was for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, when you're bargaining against the time aspect, like trying to like make up for time that you've lost or whatever, I think that realizing that either accept that you have free will or you don't or whatever, and the things that are around, there's a lot going on, right? But I think that if you look at your life and say, okay, I wouldn't be here where I am right now without 20 fucking years of deconversion, or of religion, right? Like, you wouldn't be here. So even if you were lied to, I mean, and you know what? There are people who have been in a religious atmosphere where they've been abused, where they've been, in a place where they, were close to killing themselves, those kinds of situations. And I can understand, like, whoa, like I should have got out of there sooner. That makes a lot of sense. But you are here now, and you have people to help you move forward, and you got here because of that path. You couldn't have gotten here otherwise. And so there is that, the people who are around you are here, or we're here because you deconverted. And we're not, if you didn't deconvert, it's likely that you wouldn't be around us, so
Yeah.
we're cool enough.
That got to me. That really got to me.
Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't really touch on this, but I did go through a pretty long bargaining stage. Like I was discussing this with Atheist, and then I just kept praying and praying and praying, and finally, like, I said one last prayer, and I was like, "This is it. This is it. If you don't show me something, then I'm done." Because I went through a long period of time where I blamed myself for everything. And so it was a really long process for me to go through the bargaining.
There was definitely a period of time where I was like waiting for some communication from God, some indication that he was there, some like validation of this whole like upbringing that I'd had. And yeah, it didn't come, and it took me a while to be like, okay, there's nothing there.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Definitely. Well,
Acceptance. We all know the last one, right? Acceptance.
Well, we got depression and then acceptance.
Oh, depression. Oh, depression is so fun.
So what depression is this feeling of emptiness and things like that. Did y'all experience anything like that whenever you were coming out of the faith?
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
I don't know.
Because you sort of lose this concept that there's a meaning to your life outside of yourself.
Yeah.
You have to redefine all of that. There's so much you have to redefine about everything. And that's one of those things that's really hard to lose.
I think also for me, depression came from the vastness of the universe without a God. And the And also the idea that, you know, speaking of grief, that I was going to die permanently someday. So those things got me depressed. So it wasn't my deconversion, but it was the symptoms sort of or the consequences of deconverting that put me in a, you know, in that kind of depression. I think depression during a loss of a loved one for me is more, wow, I can't talk to them again. But I didn't feel like that with Christianity. It was more like, oh crap, I'm gonna die.
Yeah, for me it was kind of the same, except I also was thinking about, you know, the loss of heaven. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to get that opportunity to spend eternity with the people that I love.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go to this place, this paradise where I'm never going to be in pain and where everything's going to be hunky-dory. And
I think
I actually went to my grandmother's funeral a couple days ago.
I'm so sorry.
I went up to where she lived and was there for a few days. And it's tough because, you know, people around you are saying that there's, you know, that she's not in pain anymore, which I agree, but then there's also like she's gonna be, you know, with Jesus or whatever. And I found for the first time that like that didn't really upset me, like because I'm so used to not thinking of that as an option. It's like, you know, I understand that they believe that and I'm okay with that. But it doesn't faze me at all that like that's not true.
Wow.
It's like it's really strange. Like it's like I already know it's not true and I'm okay with that. Which is kind of new.
I think that's
that
good.
is amazing. And you know what? I'm really proud of you, because that would be so difficult. It really would. And to accept it the way you have is just, it shows a great amount of courage and strength. And I admire that.
Thank you. Well, it's I don't know, I think it's really sad that Christianity gives us this extra like cherry on top of life, basically. That it doesn't, it takes that, you know, staying away from death, it does, but it's also like it gives you this false continuation that when you lose that, you didn't actually lose anything that you had before, but it feels so real to you.
Yeah, I have a friend who posts sometimes about this, about her. She's still a Christian, strong, very strong Christian, Calvinist actually, and she posts about the fact that, like, you know, I go through these bad times, but you know, at least I know that, you know, Jesus chose me, Jesus loves me, and I'm going to be with him in heaven. And I'm like, oh, like that, it like makes my stomach hurt for her, because I love her, you know, and I just want to be like, no, like, please just like own your now, you know, don't stop looking forward. It's okay. I mean, I understand. I try to respect her faith as much as possible, but like, I want her so much to embrace her life instead of giving it to God, you know, like to say like, my pain is mine, instead of saying my pain is okay because of Jesus, you know?
Yeah.
And so I relate to that a lot, Courtney, what you said. So, but the fact that you're able to accept that and move, you know, forward without the judgment and without the anger is awesome. You know, that you can hear them say that and be like, okay, that maybe that helps you, and that's okay.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with my mom. She just kind of, she knows I'm not a believer, and I just didn't talk about it while I was there because there's no point to that. But my mom, she kind of leaned over and she was like, I think my mom's in heaven. And I was like, okay. and she's like, I know you don't believe that. And I was like, okay. I was like, that's okay, Mom. Yeah, so it's like accepting that we don't have to agree, and you know, and I was like letting her know, like, I'm fine with you saying that and thinking that, and that's totally fine, you know. It took me a while to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ties into the whole, your people are allowed to be wrong.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
So we.
especially when it's clear that it's like providing them comfort. Yeah, I agree. Like I've done that. I can relate. I've done that too with my parents. They'll say things about going to heaven, and I'm like, cool. Like I'm glad that you feel comforted by this.
Right.
I think my belief in heaven was one of the first things to go, because I remember like even when I was a Christian, like a year before the year that I started doubting, it was like my grandma passed away, and I just remember at the funeral, like it didn't feel real that she was in heaven. Like people were talking about that, and I just felt like she was gone, and I think I avoided grappling with that emotionally for a really long time, but I don't know, I just didn't feel like she was in heaven. Yeah.
That was while you were a believer?
Hmm.
Hmm.
It took a
Yeah.
long time for me to like reconcile that I was starting to doubt. So I was probably agnostic, like, and or unsure or doubting for a long period of time before I started putting the pieces together.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. I went through something similar when my grandmother passed, and I was still a Christian. I was kind of wondering, but like not very much because I was just too busy with everything else. And when you're a teenager, you're not like thinking about that very much, to be honest. But when she passed away, it was just like this heavy feeling of I'm never gonna see her again. This is it. And I grieved for a long time. I was really close to her, and yeah, it was different. I think it might have tied into, some of my doubts, really, that experience, because it usually I would feel like, the spirit or whatever, but I didn't feel it. And it was strange because I thought that I would whenever something like that would happen. But when it didn't happen, it just was like, wow, is this real?
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. I lost my grandma too, and I understand that feeling. I also didn't have the like she's in heaven. I actually we lost one of our one of the people who went to high school with us fairly early, and I didn't think about him in heaven either. Like I don't think I ever transferred anybody there. I really think in my mind I was always just like they're not here, is what I knew, and I didn't think about them in heaven. It's really strange.
I just had it pop in my mind, like every time on Star Trek when they go in the teleporters or whatever. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Transferring,
Beam me up.
ready to receive.
Yeah. Well, you've heard the truth on that, where like the theory is that they die every time, and a clone of them reappears, and they don't know. Yeah. So like in heaven, there are just a whole bunch of William Shatners who've been beamed up.
Oh no. No.
That's like
That's Star Trek heaven.
Black
Star Trek
Mirror.
heaven.
Yeah.
I'm down with Star Trek heaven. That sounds cool.
Black Mirror has a really cool episode about that, about like clones. It's really cool. It's like season 4. It's awesome. Anyway, but one thing I did want to kind of touch on real quick is like there was one thing that did make me kind of sad that I didn't believe anymore this like last week about my grandmother, is just that when she when I was younger, she was my grandmother, but then when I was like 13, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she just kind of deteriorated so that by the time I was like 15, she didn't recognize who I was. So I never felt like I got to have a conversation with her or get to know her as an adult. And so it's like I wasn't really like losing a relationship that I had with someone. It was like the idea of someone, which did make it easier, at least for me. But what was sad was that if there's not a heaven and I'm not going to meet her, I can never meet her. you know. Like, I could never get to know her as a person and have a relationship with her, which was really sad. You know, it was really nice. So I kept asking people to like tell me stories about her, and I kept finding pictures of her and getting to know all these things about her that I didn't know. And that's what was making me cry at her funeral. Was just this concept that she was this amazing person that I wish I could have known. Yeah. Which is tough. I'm sorry, making everybody so sad.
No, I'm like, you're amazing for not, I mean, you're also, if you were tearing up, it'd be beautiful, but like, I just can't, I wouldn't be able to talk about my grandmother now, like 8 years later, and you're just holding it together. It's amazing.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I lost it a lot at the funeral, but
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, again, she's not someone I really knew, but at the same time, like, I just really wish that I could have known her.
That makes sense.
That is really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to at least express that and be there to express it, because, you know, funerals are for the living. They're for us to grieve our loss and to express those things. So that's really healthy. Wow. Depression.
Sorry.
I think, like, if we're gonna go back to deconversion in general, I think like you're dealing with the loss of so many different things. So like you've lost your identity, you've lost like a relationship with God or with Jesus, you've lost your community. So I think I've dealt with depression on like different issues at different times. So yeah, there's just so much going on with depression. It's not just like one thing. I mean, sorry, with deconversion, it's not just one thing. It's like you have to deal with like 10 different things. So I feel like this process happens for like all of those things in different times. It's just complicated.
It is. So, and sometimes, you know, it's like we were saying earlier, it's the grieving process is very fluid. So you might come right back to the depression or back to the denial or back to wherever, and go to different stages at different times depending upon the circumstances. So that's normal.
Yeah. And also, like, anxiety is really tied into depression. So, like, there's that relationship as well. So, like, that's how I experience depression, is because I would get really anxious about a lot of the things that you were all talking about, like just thinking about the world and death and what that means now. And then I would get depressed. So for me, that's kind of how what the relationship was.
Yeah, and it is kind of sad that like with funerals, there was a presenter that was, you know, religious, and there was a whole lot of scriptures quoted and stuff. And I feel sad that like there's a way to do a funeral service in a secular way that still is encouraging and honors the life of the person. And I feel like there's just a cheapening of really dealing with grief.
Did they have like a sermon?
Yeah, because my grandmother was really religious, and so I'm all for having a religious ceremony for someone who was religious, just like, you know, we would want something that's not so religious for us. So, you know, I completely respected that, but at the same time, like, it's really sad that there's this concept of, you know, she's at, you know, the table with Jesus or whatever, and it's like it doesn't have to be that to still have us deal with it in a real way and have us be comforted by each other and family, and that she lived a really good life and all of that, you know.
Yeah, when you were Christians, did that actually work I mean, really? Like, did it work for you that they were with Jesus? Like, it's just like, I think
it seems to me like you're just like pushing it off. Like, oh, they're not really gone.
Right.
Whether you like want them to not be gone or not, it's like, well, they're not. So, but you can't actually see them, and you can't interact with them, but they're not gone. So it's just, You have to deal with the grief, but you can't like accept that that's what's happened.
You okay, Christine? It looks like
Did you just fall?
Christine.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Is that her?
Do,
Oh, I thought maybe her fire alarm was going off.
do we need to call someone?
No,
Oh,
it's okay. She's back.
hey. Oh, we were so
Hey.
worried.
I'll actually, I know I'm like monopolizing it, but okay, so
That's okay.
my other grandmother, so this was my last grandparent, but my other grandmother died when I was in like junior high or earlier. And I was very religious at the time. And I remember my parents sitting me down and letting me know that my grandmother had died. And it did not faze me at all. Because I knew that she was in heaven, and there was like, she was just on the next stage, and her death didn't mean anything negative at all. And so I remember just being like smiling and just being happy that that's where she was. And that was like it. There was never a point where I was like sad that, yeah, like there wasn't a loss. And so there's such a contrast with like my earlier grandmother and this grandmother, like how I feel about it and what I'm thinking about. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I can relate to that, Courtney, because I also death did not bother me at all.
Yeah.
And I was a Christian, and I really missed that for sure. Like when other people died, and also with me, like I felt really, I didn't have any death anxiety for myself until my deconversion process started, and now I have a lot of issues with that. Like, yeah, it still makes me really anxious thinking about it. So I really miss. That's one of these moments where I'm like, I wish I could believe again, because it would be really comforting to believe in heaven.
Yeah, I didn't like heaven. I never liked it. No, for real though. Like I was like,
Really?
yeah, man. Like first of all, I recognize the fact that yeah, okay, we're a little off topic, but I recognize the fact that like you're perfect. So that means like you don't make mistakes. So you're always happy. I was like, I don't get, like, for me, the good things come with the bad because it makes them feel good. You know, like the bad things make the good things feel better. And so this like eternal bliss felt like a state of like, it kind of like how some people describe being on antidepressants. You know, like you know you're happy, but like it's just
Forced.
Yeah, like it feels forced, or you don't actually feel a difference, but everybody else notices a difference, you know? I always felt like heaven was going to be this place where we just like worshiped God, and I was like, I don't really love that like so much.
You remind me of Christopher Hitchens right now.
Yeah, Celestial North Korea.
I really bought into that idea. Like when I was a kid, I thought, like I imagined like what I was gonna do. Like I'm gonna have a nap for 1,000 years, and they're gonna have. When I was in university, okay, I was like, I love learning. This is the best thing ever. In heaven, they must have the best universities and like all the knowledge, and I'm gonna learn everything.
I love that. That's great.
And so, like, yeah, I don't know. I thought it was great. Yeah,
but see, that would be growth, and I didn't expect any growth in heaven.
Right.
Okay.
Like my expectation of like, it was like, okay, so we're with God, so we're perfect. Right? Otherwise, he can't mingle with sin, right? So how can we be like anything other than perfect? And then in that way, like I was like, so I know everything. And then like when you meet all the people, then what do you do?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I just like the idea of living forever. And I think I also like
I want to die so badly, and I'm not saying that. Like, I'm not saying that right now. I'm just saying.
He went there, y'all.
Yeah,
went there.
I laugh, but I understand what you're saying, Christine. I'm with you.
I love how contrarian you are, Christina.
Well,
I was really looking forward to it.
Otherwise, it's like Groundhog Day, you know, like
Right.
For
it's
real.
exhaustingly the same. And yeah, that would be awful.
Yeah,
Like,
and you
your life
become a
doesn't have
baller
any
piano
consequences.
player, and then the next day you wake up and do it again.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like, for real.
I don't think I really like got to that stage. I was just like, this is gonna be awesome.
Yeah, it's
Probably
Groundhog
with
Day
more
without
thinking.
the ending. Yeah.
And it's,
I was
Yeah.
thinking Big Rock Candy Mountains when I
Yeah.
was a kid.
and it's kind of like retirement for people who have worked their whole lives. Like, they get to retirement and they're like, what do I do with my time? I don't have any like purpose that I'm serving.
Mhm.
And that would be really awful. Like, again, like, you know, people cling to religion for the purpose, but then once you get to heaven, you don't have a purpose anymore.
The purpose is to worship God.
Right.
I think like when I was a
Yeah.
child, I really enjoyed like spending time with Jesus. Like he was my legit friend. I was kind of a lonely child, and
Yeah.
I get that.
I just was like, yeah, this is gonna be great. Like, you know, perfect like acceptance and peace, and yeah, I think I got over that as I grew up, but yeah, I wanted that.
Yeah, so this is evidence, I think, for maybe Christianity being true, because adults who wrote the book of Revelation, like you really thought you were convincing people that that was a good idea, like all that was a good idea. Like, what? It has to be true because it's so ridiculously like not appealing for me.
Like what it says in the book of Revelation.
Oh yeah, totally. What? Yeah. That's insane.
It is appealing. I always like, as a Christian, I loved Revelation because it was like juicy and exciting, and there was like the whore of Babylon, and I don't know, like
Me too. That's what I felt about it. And I thought, oh yay, we're gonna get to do something and fulfill our purpose, the army of God.
It's really dramatic. I mean, like all the earthquakes and all.
I think I never really thought about that.
It's like forget, yeah, but that all happens like for like, you know, a second, and then it's like eternity. Woo.
The writers would have written it down a long time before, like a long time after.
Oh,
people
sorry.
believed that. So I think that like word of mouth and people like trusting other people, I think that's more where it was rooted in. And then by the time it's like written down as a story, a lot of people believed it already.
Yeah.
That'd be my counter argument, Christine.
All right, I'll take it. I'll take it.
So when it comes to the depression part of the stages of grief and deconverting, what advice would y'all give to get through that stage? Or did you have anything else to share, maybe?
I had a word of advice, unless someone else has something to share. I think for me, my belief in God was very comforting, and the relationships that I had, I got a lot of comfort from them. And there was kind of like a break in the validation from those like family relationships. So I would say find ways to comfort yourself, like not silly things, but simple things. Like I have this one sweater that I would wear because of what it reminded me of. Like if you need to like sit with a blanket and cuddle yourself, talk to yourself, like do that. Just find different ways to replace what you lost, and that has helped me a lot.
It's good advice.
I find like reaching out to people that are friends about what you're dealing with, it's actually more helpful than talking to an imaginary friend, because you don't find any more solutions than what you already came up with. So yeah, I found that like reaching out to your community, and you know, as we say almost every time we're on here, we are all here, and you know, we are creating that community for people, and that's such an important thing.
As Godless Iowans says, don't panic, you're not alone.
So yeah, therapy. Did anybody say therapy?
Yes, therapy.
Therapy,
Definitely. Great. Yeah.
I can't, you know, I'm not seeing a therapist right now, but I should be. But yeah, definitely, and not a Christian therapist. Like try to go somewhere very far away from a Christian therapist. Yeah, it'd be cool if it was. I mean, there are some online tools too. I can't think of any right now. I know Courtney, you know, one
Isn't it like BetterHelp or something?
Yeah, sure. Google.
Yeah. Google.
Ask Google. Google knows.
Google, but yeah, therapy's great. Yeah, therapy helped me like figure out how to process these emotions in a healthy adult way, because that was one of the things I didn't get because of partly the religion and just also like my parents' parenting style, which was to just not talk about feelings ever. So yeah, therapy is great, and yeah, I agree with what everyone else is saying. You know, having a support system is good. And finding replacements for the community is important. So I would also, like now I'm a member of a political group, like political activist group, which has been really great because we also do like community service related stuff that kind of feels like I'm fulfilling that, the thing that I was missing. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. And also just being patient with yourself and like letting yourself feel what you feel, and, you know, feeling that, knowing that that's a valid part of what you're going through, and, you know, not try to rush your way out of it, or, you know, self-care, and like be, you know, find your like spa days or whatever, like things that help you sort of like relax and get back into your body to make you feel like you're real, because sometimes that's in question. Yeah.
And Stephen Bowman in the chat brought up a good point. Get a cat. They're good.
Oh, yeah, I want to get a pet.
Cats are great for therapy. And if you don't like cats, you can get a puppy.
Christine can, advertise.
Fur babies.
It's a beautiful cat.
So acceptance. Do we get to talk about the last step?
Sure. You just accept it and move on. Bye.
So for acceptance, you have to start a stream and get about like 4 other people, preferably you know, they can be of the same gender, or they cannot, you know, identify themselves as anything. And then you name it whatever gender of deconversion, and then talk to each other once a month.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Okay, related to that, and related to someone, I don't know if it was Courtney, no, I think it might have been Heather, like surround yourself with people that are okay with not being a Christian. And I think that really helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that I do want to highlight about acceptance is it doesn't imply that everything's okay. It just means that you've adjusted somewhat to a new normal.
Mm-hmm.
You might even revert back to, as Rachel was saying, it's multifaceted. So you have all these different things that you'll have to deal with, and you're not going to be able to think of them all at once. So as they come, you deal with it and you learn a new normal. And that's what acceptance is about.
Dishwasher, I'll be right back.
I think, sorry, did you want to say something, Heather?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, for me, it's about, I think acceptance has been like not being bitter, which is different than, oh, yay, another cat.
Yay! I believe in the power of the floof.
Yes. My cat, I had my cat out over here too, but you could only see her tail. But yeah,
Yay!
Yay, cats.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, like, acceptance too, I think, is like finding that balance between like not being bitter, but it's okay to still be angry in the way that Courtney, you were talking about a while ago. Like, it's okay to still be critical of religion and other institutions. And like Jen was saying, just like, it doesn't mean you're saying everything's okay. But I think for me, it's really, I have been able to like work past like a lot of the personal internalized bitterness that I had during the angry phase. So yeah, that's really helped me.
So I think it's funny, Heather, I agree with like the idea of trying to quell your bitterness and that sort of as a different kind of acceptance. But I do think deconversion begins with acceptance. I think I'm pretty sure that in this case, it's the first step instead of the last, because I don't think you end up with the grief and the anger and that until you're like, wait a minute.
Right.
That's
And
true.
Well, it depends on what you're accepting, I guess. Like if you're accepting this might not be right,
Mhm.
and then you can also accept, okay, this might not be right, and I have this new way of viewing the world.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you're indoctrinated, and like I was, and like most of us have been, you kind of have to go through. You have to accept. You face an kind of like you could start at either stage, but I think initially it does come and start with acceptance of something in order
Yeah.
to get you to
Because
progress.
the reason that you're grieving and the reason that you're like going through all these stages is because you've accepted that.
Yeah.
But I guess there is a, like Rachel was saying, like there is a next level of acceptance, of accepting the conclusions you've come to, and accepting that, like, you know, you can't rely on a heaven and you can't rely on a plan for your life, and being able to move through the world and have that not devastate you, you know.
Yeah.
But also, like, you know, like you were saying, Mrs. Snarky, that like accepting that you're going to feel differently at different times and you're going to go back and forth. So backtracking to, you know, I feel okay about this, but today I really don't. That's okay too.
Yeah. For me, it was because I deconverted from Christianity, but I still clung to some beliefs like spirit exists, souls exist, karma exists, these kinds of things. And having held on to those, I got right back into the spiritual but not religious thing. So I had to go through it all over again. And it was tough, but I think I've seen a lot of examples of this where people come out of religion and then they go into something spiritual, like New Age beliefs or something like that. So it's a process, and sometimes it's a lifelong one because that indoctrination, it goes so deep. You're raised in it. But, and sometimes you recognize it and you just go, oh wow, I got to deal with this.
Yeah. Also, Christine was touching on this idea of like accepting that you used to believe, and accepting that time, you know, you may feel like it's time that you lost, but it is time that you spent getting to where you are now.
Yes.
And so like you learned from that and you're probably a stronger person because of that. And so it can, yeah, it can be annoying that like you lost all this time believing something false. But it did make you who you are. So yeah, accepting that that was a part of your life, and that it's a part of your future can be
Yes.
tough, but it can get there.
Definitely. Yeah. It's, yeah. I don't want to like leave on that note, but because we haven't talked a lot about acceptance, but I think it is the best and easiest one to go through.
I think that's, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think that ending on that note is perfect.
Awesome.
Just my opinion, but I mean, if anybody else has anything to say about acceptance, that's fine too.
Yeah, we don't have to go through and tell you how to accept. Like you'll figure it out. You'll do all right.
Yeah,
You got
I was thinking like probably for a lot of these things, but acceptance specifically, it's kind of something that just like you don't you I don't think you can try to accept. It's something that kind of happens and is a very natural progression. So
Yeah.
like just you know, be patient with yourself.
Just do it.
In your process.
So before we go, does anybody, someone asked for us to introduce ourselves. I kind of talked about who everybody was in the chat, but why don't you run across everyone real quick, what you do in the atheist community and your name, because we didn't say that.
Okay.
Courtney, go ahead, you start.
Okay, I'm Courtney. I am president of Metroplex Atheists here in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. So we create that sense of community and separation church and state issues. So we try to make the world better. And then I also am a co-host on Atheist Edge, and I'm a very proud member of the Women of Deconversion.
Yeah.
So that's basically me. My degree is in psychology, so I tend to talk about those things. And yeah.
Heather?
Hi, I'm Heather. I co-host a podcast with Christine called Forsaking Faith, and I am almost done with my PhD in English literature, and I live somewhere in the southeast region of the state.
And she's very private, is what she's saying.
Gotcha. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Snarky?
I am Jennifer, and I'm very snarky. I also studied psychology and sociology in Texas at Sam Houston State, but I didn't quite get to finish. Some things happened, and here I am. Now I am a housewife, and I also help Philosophically Godless channel. I help him co-host a lot, and I have my own channel. So, yay! I talk about philosophy, woo stuff, deconversion. A lot of it's really just me being me and trying to be funny, I guess. I don't Mostly just the snark. And Women of Deconversion. I love this project. This is like amazing. I love you girls.
I know. We love you too. I'm glad we see each other once a month. It's good. But I wish I had you closer.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. All right, Rach.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm from Canada. I trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. Finished a degree, started a second one. Now I'm hoping to become a software engineer. I don't know if I told you guys. But anyways, I did have a YouTube channel and a Twitter, but I haven't gone on there in a while. I probably will pick it up after. So on Twitter, I'm Rach in Reality, and on YouTube, I'm Rachel in Reality. Yeah, I like connecting with you guys too.
Oh, sweet. I'm Christine from Forsaking Faith and Women of Deconversion, and I still want to grow secular hangouts. So if you want to cast here ever with some friends and just, you know, bullshit about what it's like to deconvert, let me know, and we'll get you a stream and a time. I think it's important that we grow this community with some powerful, strong leaders. So anybody who can take that role over for me. No, so yeah, and I really appreciate everybody who comes and hangs out with us every month. Philosophically Godless Iowan, Wonder Lady, Steve Bauman, who else was in there? Snarky. We had
got
Purple
Rhymes with
Orange.
We have the Atheist Veteran. We have
a
couple other
bunch, and we really appreciate that you're here listening to us and validating what we say and asking us questions and helping us grow. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who pays attention.
I second that.
Yeah,
it feels good. It just feels validating, which is what we're all about, basically, is validating each other. So it's good that we have a group like you that's extension of us. So yeah, so thanks. We'll see you next month. We may or may not be talking about the other sins. We'll see. And we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks.